Does it feel like every part of your life is divided? Every scenario, every environment, your church, your school, your work, your friends, left, right, conservative, liberal, religious, secular. It seems you always have to take a side. This is a conversation between a progressive Christian and a conservative atheist who happen to be great friends. Welcome to Living on Common Ground.
Do you think if we met today, we would still be friends?
I don't know, but we're friends now.
A mob is no less a mob because they're with you.
Man, so what? We won a few games. And y'all fools think that's something? Man, that ain't nothing, y'all. And you know what else? We ain't nothing either. Yeah, we came together in camp. Cool. But then we're right back here and the world tells us that they don't want us to be together. We fall apart like we ain't a damn bit of nothing, man.
So.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so pronounce your last name, Steve.
Yeah, it's Ghikadis.
Ghikadis. Okay. All right.
It's a lot easier than it looks.
Yeah. No, now that you say it, it's real easy. Yeah. So I'm glad you joined us. So now you're calling in from from Canada, but you're really almost in Detroit, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm South Detroit, like the song Journey, Don't Stop Believing, born and raised in South Detroit. Okay. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So we got connected through a mutual friend, Gary, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been on Gary's podcast called, do you remember that? It's Sand and Shoot. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know the name of it either.
Yeah. I was trying to give him a free shout out and I can't remember.
So, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, Gary's a great guy.
There you go, Lucas. We'll put it in the show notes. So, and then we connected on Facebook through Gary, and then I saw that you're doing some work with trying to help people find common ground. Is that right? Lost the audio again, Steve. Says you're muted.
Okay. It's saying the background noise reduction has been disabled due to high system load, it's telling me.
Excellent. Yeah, that's best. Okay. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So, so I wrote a book about getting along with people regardless what your backgrounds and beliefs are, and that's been kind of my life's work since overcoming issues in my interfaith relationship. It's been basically my goal is to try and get people to get rid of the us versus them narrative and find shared values.
So
what's the name of the book?
Yeah.
The book is called Humanism from the Heart, Building Bridges Beyond Belief.
So
when did it come out? Sorry, Lucas.
No, I'm going to talk now. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I just want to know when it came out, and then I'm going to let you talk.
Yeah. It came out on March 23rd last year, so it's coming up on 1 year right now.
So why did you write that book?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that went into it. The biggest thing was my interfaith marriage. And I went through a very bad angry atheist phase when I kind of came out to everybody that I was a non-believer. And I felt like I was being judged for the way that I didn't believe, even though I felt like more mad at myself than anyone else for duping people into thinking that. And then when I reached out to people like Anthony Magnabosco, who had been practicing street epistemology, and Dale McGowan, who had written books on interfaith families and things like that, they both helped me get to a point where I could develop that mutual understanding between people of different backgrounds and beliefs.
So when you say, are you saying interfaith marriage? Is that what you're saying?
Interfaith, yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So tell me about that. What do you mean?
So interfaith is just kind of a term that we use because we don't really have a better one. I guess you could say mixed worldview relationship, but people that there's believers and there's people who are non-believers and there's people who are believers in different deities and religious systems. So it's just if you're in a relationship with somebody and both of your worldviews are different, you can call it interfaith.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that you're married to somebody who is a believer?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm married to a Christian.
Okay. And so were you guys, I don't want this to sound like an interrogation here, so I apologize if that's how it ends up sounding, but
that's all good.
Well, I guess probably a good place to start, or that I would be interested in is what, if you could give kind of a 10,000 foot view of what your process or your progression or journey has been. And then and I'm interested. So did you get married when you both were believers, and then you kind of changed at that point, or were you not a believer when you guys got married?
Yeah, it's a really complicated story, and I can start at the beginning.
Of course.
So I was raised as a free thinker. So my mom did all the best practices for raising free thinkers without knowing it because she didn't read the book because the book wasn't written. So Dale McGowan, who wrote the book Parenting Beyond Belief, he talks about the 9 best practices for raising free thinkers, and there's really good tips in there. But basically, she did all those things without knowing it. So I was able to experience critical thinking, just be able to experience the world for what it is. And I got to go and go see friends' churches and mosques and temples and things. And I grew up with different people in different backgrounds and just kind of was able to integrate into all of those different systems and, felt really connected to everybody. So I would consider myself, looking back, to be an atheist. I didn't really believe in any higher powers, but I didn't really care one way or the other. And then when I joined the Masonic Lodge, as a promise to my late grandfather, it was a very religious organization, whereas they teach a lot of the biblical stories as how you move through the ranks there. Yeah. And, they say you have to believe in a higher power to be part of it. So I'm like, I guess I can say I believe in a higher power. Sure. Like, I didn't know. And when they kneel you down at the altar, they say, who do you put your faith in? And they whisper in your ear, in God. So I kind of said, in God, with a question mark, and yeah. I went through a whole journey of trying to experience and try and find my place within the world, whether or not I believed it. So at the same time, I was attending the United Church of Canada, which is, because of the Masonic Lodge, most of the members there were members of this church. So I started going along with them. And at the same time, I met who was going to be my wife at a birthday party. She was coming down the stairs. I'm like, oh, she's really good looking. And I saw some ice cream cake. So I grabbed some ice cream cake and I smushed it on the side of her face. And I didn't say a word to her. And I started eating it off her face. And I'm really sorry about that. And then, I was embarrassed. So I went upstairs. She followed me upstairs and she, kind of confronted me, and we were just like laughing and joking, and then talked about all the things that we wanted to accomplish in the world. And, we found out we had so many things in common. And she was going to this United Church that I was going to the Masonic Lodge with. So it kind of I was like, maybe there's something to this. So, I was attending church with her, and I got to the point where I said, maybe I should be confirmed in the faith. So I went and talked to the minister, and the minister said, well, it's one thing to say that you believe, but you really need to believe if you want to be confirmed. So, and I kind of expressed my doubts to him, and I just said, there's never really been anything that's given me sufficient evidence of a higher power or a God. So I can't say that I do believe. And, he just kind of didn't let me be confirmed. And then so at our wedding, which was kind of inherently religious because, I'm attending church with her, the families were attending church together and everything. And her parents got up and did a speech at our reception. And they said, we're so happy she met a man who believes the exact same thing she does. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because I'm like, shoot, I don't, so I didn't know what to do or what to say. And I kind of felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing because I'm like, these people think that I'm something I'm not. And I was sitting in the pews beside them every week and going through all the motions, but not really being in it. Yeah. And then, I got a call from the minister saying they wanted me to come and light the Christ candle and pass the plate around. And I just said, I just can't because I don't believe it. And I need to kind of tell everybody that I don't believe it. And when I did that and I said, I don't think I can go to church anymore, it was very it was like a big dampener on my relationship. And and some of the things that had happened, including like the being asked to do the plates, like to pass the plate around and everything, kind of triggered me to be more of like kind of an angry person. So I started attacking her beliefs and the beliefs of my friends and family. And I went down a really negative path. And I got to one point where, you know, things weren't really working out that well for me and for everybody else. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And that's when I reached out to Anthony and to Dale and said, you know, like, please help. I'm trying to find ways to find common ground, have cordial conversations. And, you know, I worked with them for quite a long time on that, joined some Facebook groups, had some better conversations, practiced street epistemology, did all that stuff. And I was able to rebuild my marriage, be able to, you know, rebuild the bridges that I had burned with other people as well. And then I thought, you know what, now that I've got to the point where I am confident in the way that I've interacted with people, I'm going to start writing this down on a blog so that other people can benefit from it.
Yeah.
And I'm volunteer for Recovering from Religion as well. So at NanoCon, that's where I met Gary Parker. I was tabling for Recovering from Religion, and I actually did a workshop, a couple workshops, one with them and then one for my book. But so when I was working with Recovering from Religion, I was also, you know, practicing these conversations and being able to reach across the divide and be a shoulder to cry on or something for somebody who may be experiencing some doubt, maybe experiencing some anger. And I was kind of able to help people navigate that as well. Recovering from Religion is a really good organization because we're not necessarily there to deconvert anyone. We're there to meet them where they're at. So basically they're coming to us in whatever state they're in, and, you know, say they're gay and they say, you know, my church is being really negative towards, you know, gay people and saying I'm sinful. We'll say, you know, well, the Unitarian Universalists down the road there, they don't actually judge that. So, you know, if you wanted to attend them, you know, go ahead and do that. So we do point people in those directions as well. And we offer, you know, resources for people in any situation. But yeah, basically that's where I was writing a blog for Recovering from Religion, but doing it in a way where I was mentioning stories that had happened in my past and how I was able to overcome these issues and how I was able to have these cordial conversations. And people were saying, like, you know what, this would be really cool as a book. So I'm like, yeah, that's a really good idea. So I compiled all the stories. I wrote a message on Facebook saying I'm writing a book if anyone has some cool memories from the past. And then I had someone reach out to me that said, I want to edit your book for free. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And it was a friend of mine who I didn't know she was an author, but she actually is a pretty famous author. And so she said, I'll do it for free. She took it and she goes, this is no good. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, it really hit me in the heart that I'm like, what do you mean it's no good, right? And she said, well, you know, you have some really good ideas, and so there's a lot of heart in here, but there's just no unifying message that's tying everything together. So I was like, oh, all right, never mind. I'm not going to write the book. I'll just leave them up there as a blog. And then a few months later, I was doing a podcast for Humanist Canada, which is basically the humanist organization that kind of oversees everything in Canada here. I'm also licensed through them as an officiant to do weddings and funerals and that type of thing. But I was doing a podcast for them, and they said, we're looking for this segment that is kind of your style of having conversations. And I said, okay, let's call it something like, you know, it's from the heart. So maybe humanism from the heart. And I'm like, never mind, don't use that. I'm going to use that for my book. Right. So when I got the name for the book, then I'm like, okay, now all these ideas are starting to pull together, and I was able to pour my heart out on paper. And I said, what is it I'm trying to accomplish with this book? Well, I'm also trying to build bridges. So let's put the subtitle, Building Bridges Beyond Belief. And then everything just started flowing out, and I started pulling down all the stories off of Medium that I'd already posted on there because things had changed so much. And then that's basically how the book was formed, and that's where it came from. So sorry about the long-winded response.
Oh, that's great.
That's the story of it.
That's what I was interested in. So it sounds like your childhood, and correct me if I'm wrong, was not really a real religious childhood. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was baptized Anglican. As being in Canada here,
we
kind of still have the Anglican Church as one of the prominent religious groups here. But it was. I was more of an explorer. I was taking kind of things from different belief systems that I thought were useful and meaningful, and not realizing that the idea of humanism, pulling all of these things together, the principles that really matter for, you know, dignity, respect, compassion, empathy, scientific investigation, all of these different things are kind of the principles of humanism, but I didn't really know it at the time because I didn't know the label.
Okay. So it's not really a situation where, you had like a time period in your life where you're what might be called a true believer and then walked away from that. It was more like you were kind of developed in this humanist tradition, but then later in life as an adult felt kind of compelled through joining the Masonic Lodge and that kind of thing to kind of accept the uniform, if you will, of the dominant religion. Is that fair to say? Is kind of the progress?
Yeah, I guess that would be a way to word it for sure. I mean, I always had different types of thinking. I kind of had conspiratorial thinking at certain points in my life. Like I believed that the Anunnaki were real. I thought that the ancient alien theory was correct, right? Because it was on the History Channel.
Sure.
So like you see things and you say, okay, well, this must be a part of our history, or, that makes more sense to me than, a supernatural God and blah, 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 right? But then not knowing that it actually asks more questions than it answers, right? So just a lot of things throughout my life that I kind of questioned. I even went out in the woods at one point and said, Zeus, if you're real, hit me with lightning, right? Like I just was very curious about the world and just wanted to know, what is out there, if anything. And to me, I just haven't found sufficient evidence to warrant belief in anything supernatural.
Yeah. Okay. And the kind of confrontation that you were talking about in with the church and with your spouse and all of that, was that early on in the marriage, or was that like had you guys been married for a while, or how did that?
Yeah, it was pretty early on in the marriage because it was basically just after we had gotten married that things started really collapsing on me.
Yeah.
And it was more like self-inflicted. So I always say I was more mad at myself than anyone else because I was the one duping people, right?
Yeah.
Like I was the one sitting in the pews beside them pretending to be something I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it happens more often than you think, right? Like I had a lot of people calling at Recovering from Religion saying, I'm sitting in the pews, but I'm not there. I'm not a believer like everybody else around me. And everyone feels like they're alone in that. And one of the messages we like to say is you're not alone, right? So there are people out there that are going through those same things. And sometimes they lash out because it's self-inflicted. It's something that the harm that they've caused to themselves by not being true to themselves and not expressing who they actually are.
It's really interesting. It strikes me, sorry, Jeff, I know I'm kind of dominating now, but it strikes me that your experience of, they want you to pass the plate around and do the candle and all of that, and you feel like, oh man, they think I believe something that I don't believe. I think that is probably something that almost everyone who sits in a pew could say, that
Yeah.
there's some aspect that of the kind of the group idea in any given congregation that I think every single individual in that congregation would go, oh, they think I believe that. I don't really believe that. Like even if they would say that they accept 99% of it, well, there's that 1%.
Right.
Maybe they think I believe in that part and I don't, and you kind of keep it to yourself. And I think that that's a common experience of feeling like you're not being, in inverted quotations, authentic, So that's an interesting, progression that you're talking about.
This was also 11 years ago, or almost 12 years ago now. So since then, I mean, I go to church once in a while with her and the kids. We do church events and things like that. I go to spaghetti dinners. I don't have any problem with the church people.
Yeah.
We've kind of come to the understanding that I have a different worldview than they do, and all of them accept me for that. A lot of them have actually read my book, so it's kind of cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, I find I was gonna say, I find it interesting to hear the reason for the anger, because in what I have, I don't know if it was assumed or witnessed or experienced is the right way of putting it, but it seems to me, at least from what I've perceived, is a lot of times we all go through sort of whenever our belief system changes, whenever our worldview changes, it appears like we become the fundamentalist version of that. Right. And so, And it appears to me that a lot of times when someone is coming out of a very religious background, which is more of the Tennessee, southern states of Ohio, the United States, there's an anger, but they're coming out of a very traditional sort of religious background, um, and I've always assumed that the anger is being directed towards the traditional religious tradition that they're coming out of. But it's interesting to hear that the anger is a result of being looked inward, that I'm actually angry with myself. Was it like, I'd like to hear more about that, because I've always assumed that the anger was, I can't believe I've been duped for so long. And now I realize that that was all garbage.
I think that it's there's multiple ways to experience anger. And I think that mine is a little bit unique because I was raised as a free thinker. So I didn't have the belief going into the situation, whereas a lot of people might believe it, like Lucas said, being true believers and then losing the faith. I was never like that. I never had the true belief. So I think that it's a little bit of a different scenario for me. But yeah, I'm open to discussing anything about the anger side, the angry atheist period of my life.
Yeah, all I say is I found it fascinating when you had the self-realization that my anger. So how did it manifest?
Yeah, so I started ridiculing people's beliefs. I would go on like forums online and blast people. I would talk negatively about my spouse and her beliefs and her family, and just really did some damage, really burned some bridges, and it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. I saw Lucas nod because I think I remember from Lucas's own story going on some online forums as well. Is that true?
Dude, I've done so much. The hilarious thing when I think about myself as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and then on through is that like I did the same thing over and over again. Where like when I was 17, 18, I was getting ready to go to college. I remember this is the heyday of Yahoo chat rooms, and and I was a true believer at that point, and I would go into LDS Mormon chat rooms to debate people about how Mormonism wasn't real Christianity, right? And so, and I did that with the same type of vehemence as I would when I kind of decided that as an adult that I might as well call myself an atheist,
right?
And yeah, I can definitely relate to that. That I have, I've got that strain of wanting to, to just argue with everyone. That's a part of it. What I'm interested in too is, this feeling that I've got to make sure that I'm authentic. You mentioned that you attend church now from time to time, and go to spaghetti dinners and stuff and are around them. Do you still have a feeling that you've got to make sure people know what your real belief system is, or does it bother you less now if you imagine that they think you believe something you don't believe? Does that make sense? Like, is there still that like feeling of being real or whatever?
Right. That's a really good question. And it's something that I think changes based on the day. So there's days where I feel like, you know what, I really want people to know that I'm not a believer. Mm-hmm. And then there's other days where I'm like, if someone says, God bless you, I'll say, oh, thank you, you too.
Yeah.
Like it really doesn't bother me in certain circumstances. Certain circumstances, I don't bat an eye. But then there's other times where I'm like, in this certain circumstance, I definitely want people to know that I'm a non-believer. And, it does happen on occasion where I'll get people from the church who I'll see out in public and they'll say, they'll send me messages and things, or they'll say something out loud of like, I respect your beliefs, but I do think that, the reason why you're doing the good things that you're doing is because of, the hands and feet of Jesus and whatever. And I go, okay, yeah, if I'm living up to somebody that you admire like that, then I take pride in that. So, that's how I answer those type of questions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that it's different in the different circumstances. That makes sense.
You mentioned earlier
definitely
about and Lucas, you referenced it too, this idea that everybody probably has different beliefs, that when you're gathering together on a Sunday morning or Saturday night or whatever it is you gather for worship in Christian communities, or really any communities. I can only speak for the Christian community though. Even pastors, like I know pastors that are, the only reason they continue to pastor is because they've got so much time invested in it and they can't imagine trying to start a new career, and they don't actually believe the things that they've been taught it means to believe in order to be a Christian. I've kind of reached the point myself over the last, 20 years, where I don't really care what people think I believe. I'm not so worried about trying to correct people's assumptions about what I believe, and I really don't care what other people believe either. But what I do care about is how we behave and what we do.
Right.
And so for me, you mentioned like if someone says, well, that the reason that you care, Steve, about helping people find common ground or getting along is because you're actually doing the hands and feet of Jesus work, right? To me, when I first started out, it was about my faith. It was my faith that caused me to want to do this work. But lately, over the last few years especially, it's more of just a genuine desire to see people not be jerks. And actually how can we actually get along? How can we get above our beliefs? And the realization that whatever your worldview is, right? 3 people here, 3 different worldviews. Even though you both are not persons of faith in the way that I'm a person of faith, it's still different worldviews. How can we get to the point where we can get beyond our own worldview, understand that our worldview is simply our worldview, that we don't have a claim on what is ultimate truth, live with it, but live well together with it?
Yeah. And that's the $1 million question, and that's what I've been trying to answer. And I think that, I do it's funny that you say don't be a jerk, because the last line of my book is actually don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I start my presentations off like that too. I usually will start and I'll say, I'm going to start with a quote, and it just says don't be a dick. And I say, that's my presentation. Thank you everyone for showing up, and jokingly conclude. But no, like one of the things I do talk about that I kind of came up with is the 3 mutuals. And one of them is mutual understanding. So if you can develop a mutual understanding of why the person believes what they believe. So, and then again, the keyword being mutual. So if you can develop an understanding of what it is that they believe, and they can understand what you believe, that's the very first step. So, you can say like, I know that you don't believe in a God because you don't find sufficient evidence. And I know that you believe in a God because you are hopeful for an afterlife, right? Like just say that those are 2 examples. So that's a mutual understanding. You understand each other in that sense. Now, the next step would actually be the acceptance. So just because you know that somebody believes a certain thing for a certain reason, it doesn't mean that you accept that, right? So some people will be like, they're done at that point. No, I can't accept that you believe this because you want to see your parents in an afterlife or whatever, right? That's going to be the hindrance of the next step. So if the next step is mutual acceptance, you can accept why, okay, I understand fully why you would want to see your parents in the afterlife. So I totally get why you would want to believe. And the same thing for somebody in my circumstance where it's like, I don't believe, someone can say, I fully accept that you don't see evidence for it because you know what, I can't provide evidence for that. It's just something that you have to take on faith, right? So that would be a mutual acceptance stance. Then you get to the mutual respect, and that's the hardest one to build that I find, because in order to respect somebody, you have to go beyond what the beliefs are and actually respect the person, right? So you can say, I don't really believe what you believe, but I can respect you as a person, as a human. And I think that's where the humanism part comes in. And you can say, I respect you for who you are, and regardless of what your beliefs are. And I think that's what you're saying, Jeff, is that we get to the point where that worldview doesn't really matter. What matters is that what we care, what is it that we put our care into for the person? And I think that this is a controversial statement that I've made a lot, and a lot of atheists get mad at me for saying this, and a lot of them will push back on me a lot. And what I say is that humanism is a universal term, and I don't think that you have to be an atheist to use the word humanism. Secular humanism, sure, because it says secular, so it means non-religious, right? But with like the word humanism, it actually came from Christianity. It was actually progressive Christians that came up with the term humanism. And so when someone says, I'm a humanist, I don't necessarily go, oh, okay, you're an atheist then. I just take it at the face value for what they're saying. My wife considers herself to be a Christian humanist because she puts the principles of humanism above her religious dogma. So, she is operating on empathy. She's operating on compassion, on understanding, on scientific investigation. She's doing all the things that you would consider to be humanistic, but she happens to believe that the universe was created. And, what I always say is that's the smallest thing, because really nobody knows for sure where the universe came from, if it had a beginning at all, right? We don't know. But we are... If we can understand that the rest of all the other things we agree on, say 99% or even 87% of what's out there, especially at the ground level and the shared values, then why argue about where the universe came from?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I think I'm a Christian humanist.
There you go.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
What were you going to say, Lucas?
Yeah, it strikes me that the process or the attempt to find common ground when we're talking about this, when we're talking about how do you reach across these belief divides and all that kind of stuff. A lot of times, I think what we're imagining is this, even if it's a difficult one, a cordial conversation, a conversation between two people like you were talking about, who are mutually trying to reach some sort of agreement or not agreement necessarily, not agreement at all, but like some sort of connection.
Just an understanding?
Yeah, some sort of understanding.
Yeah.
So what I have been thinking about a lot, and I would like to get your thoughts on this, is it seems like the real work for me as an individual is to figure out some way to have a connection with that person who is not interested in having that mutual understanding, right? I'll just give you an example, and I've used this example before. My grandmother believes in a literal heaven and hell. Well, if you believe in that, then that is that's like a cliff. That's like a cliff that your grandchild can fall off of and die, right? Mm-hmm. So it is, and she believes in it in a way that I, quote unquote, believe in gravity. I know it's there. She knows it's there, right? And so it is completely, it would be completely neglectful for her to not think about her grandson falling off the cliff, right? Right. When I'm trying to have a relationship with her, I have to know that she has this, again, in inverted commas, knowledge of the world. And so I can't, at some point, like, I'm not going to be able to have a connection with her if I'm continuing to try to have this like authentic conversation about who I am and who she is. You know what I mean? And so, so I find myself wondering, well, I want to continue having relationships with people who don't want to bridge the divide of belief. I still want to have relationships with them. So how do I do that, right? And so that's the thing that I've been thinking about. I'd like to get your thoughts on that part.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a nuanced thing. There's so much nuance to all of this, right? Like, it depends on what you mean by authentic and what it is that you want to come across as being authentic as, because love is the basis, right? So if you love your grandmother and you want to be part of her life, then you don't need to create any kind of conflict. There doesn't have to be anything. You could pretend to be whoever you want to be with your grandmother if you're using love as the basis, right? Love and respect and everything. And I would say that's even more genuine, is to be respectful and not try and, deconvert her, or just, even just give her the knowledge that you are a non-believer and give her that fear and that stress that she doesn't need. Right. So, I think the one thing about humanism is that, morality, if we want to talk about it as being, inherited traits over time that we've used to survive and build up a rapport and a social contract with other people. One of the biggest things is to not cause harm, right? Like the Hippocratic Oath, it's like, you're trying to minimize the amount of harm. So when you're in every situation, if you're trying to do your best to minimize harm, I think that you're doing the right thing. If you think about it from humanistic morality, I think that, there are some things like we've heard this all in like call-in shows and stuff, but someone says, you give your child a shot, which causes harm, but it's going to prevent them from getting something like measles in the future, which is going to cause them even more harm, right? So if you're causing the least amount of harm by lying to somebody in quotation marks, telling little white lies or just not sharing information that you think is going to be harmful, you can be doing the most moral thing in that certain circumstance. If you did want to approach the subject, like if she does already know that you're a non-believer, this is something that I did talk to my wife about. And I said, would an all-loving God, you know me, I'm like, would an all-loving God send me to hell, me, the person in front of you right now, for the person that I am, just because I don't believe in him? Right. And that's a really big thing for people to kind of try and get their head around. Like,
Sure.
Why would an all-loving God send somebody who is a good person, who does charity work, who does like bridge building work, right? Why would this person who probably, if there is a God, is using that person to accomplish their goals, right? Why would an all-loving God send that person to somewhere like hell, or even create hell in the first place, right? But those are the type of things that you can go down if you really want to. But the one thing I always keep in my mind is two things in my mind. One thing is, what is my goal for this conversation? So if my goal for this conversation is to just have a loving relationship and have a really nice conversation with this person, that's going to be my goal, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I also try and think in my mind all the time, what can I learn from this? So anytime I go into a certain circumstance, like even right now, I'm thinking, what can I learn from this, right? So I'm picking up information from you, Lucas, and from you, Jeff, and I'm just trying to, add this to my life. What positives and negatives am I getting from this situation that I can now carry on into the next situation, and how is that going to help me in my future conversations, if that makes any sense?
Yeah.
I tried to, after you said it, put a note on my phone. See if I got this right. Was it mutual understanding, then acceptance, and then respect?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I got that.
Yeah.
So I do have one more question, and I think it's probably, I'd like to hear, because I think all three of us would have a different answer. So, well, first of all, the first question is, it seems to me like we all care about helping people or working towards finding common ground. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know.
Lucas, you don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, you think he's joking, but I wonder sometimes. Anyway, okay, but the question is why? Because I think it'd be interesting. I think that we may all be doing it for different reasons. Not everybody,
Right.
This is something I'm actually learning. Not everybody cares about helping people find common ground for the same reason I do. I had to learn that.
Right. And then I think the most important question is, does it matter?
Does the common ground matter, or does the work matter?
No, does the reason matter?
Do you think it matters, Jeff?
That's a really good question. I think it helps me gain appreciation for the greater importance of the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that have, yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of people that have different goals. There is a group called the Ahmadiyya Muslims. Not sure if you know that sect of Islam, but basically they were founded in India. I think it was like 1800s or something. And they have a new prophet that came after Muhammad. And their whole approach and their motto is love for all, hatred for none. So they have these interfaith symposiums, and I've actually participated in a couple of the interfaith symposiums as a secular humanist and as an atheist speaker. And their ultimate goal, they think that their prophet is coming back and that everyone will be kneeling before the prophet, and they want to unite everybody before this prophet comes. And I don't believe that. And I don't think that's a really good reason to get everyone to work together. But I also don't really care, because we are working together and they're bringing all these people together, and it's really helping the world because we're able to be on a stage together, shake hands, hug, share sweet messages back and forth between the different groups. And I think that, the ultimate goal that somebody has for doing the thing matters really little in the grand scheme if the goal is mutual respect and, the world being a better place because we're finding shared values.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you're looking for particular results, like people working better together, people being more at peace or whatever, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the reason. In general, I can see an argument for someone saying that the reasons would matter because you could imagine the process being derailed if the intent isn't a good intent. But but I think that I probably fall on your side of the ledger as far as that question goes. My reason is that I want peace. I want a place of peace for my kids. That's really why I care about finding common ground and bridging divides. I'm not. I'm definitely not evangelistic about being a non-believer. In fact, I kind of like the believers more a lot of the time, So, so I really don't have, and like I said, I have a strong connection myself personally. I live in kind of several different worlds. And so I have a lot of friends who we see a lot of the world the same way, but they're pretty traditionalist religious people, right? Christians. Right. And I don't talk about that part. Well, what I do is talk about things in ways that I feel like I can talk about them without explicitly lying, right? But there's like you were saying, Steve, there's no reason to nitpick or to get into things that are I think kind of irrelevant to our relationship, and so yeah, but to answer your question, Jeff, that's the reason for me. That's the reason. I am concerned about having a place. I want a walled compound of sanctuary for my kids, and so that's why. For me,
yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I mean, like I find that my meaning and purpose is my family. So if I can provide my family with a better world, that's the ultimate goal. Yeah. And just being in an interfaith relationship or a mixed worldview relationship gives me a bigger perspective of the other people that are out there and what the goals are that people want to accomplish. And, as long as it's not harming themselves or harming others, then I'm okay with whatever reason they have, as long as we're all working for the same goal.
Have you felt influence from your wife over the course of your relationship in terms of this? Like it sounds like she has been influenced by you in some ways. Have you seen that reciprocally? I don't know if that's a word.
Yeah, I think that is a word. Yes, I would say. I can't, nothing really comes to mind right now, but I do know that just living with her and having her express to me times where it's like, she just wishes she could be a better Christian. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And she says I want to be able to go to church more. I want to be able to go to Bible study, or I want to be able to go, take the kids to church, and providing that without any kind of barrier, just saying yeah, absolutely. Go and do that. It's given me so much of an open mind to allow my kids to be exposed to that, and just to learn that there's other beliefs in the world, that there's other people that think different things, and there's different ways to approach different things. And I think that my kids having the exposure to, humanism, Christianity, it's they're able to kind of pick from the cafeteria of what it is that they think is important in this world, and the way that they want to build their moral system. My kids have, grown leaps and bounds over what I did when I was a kid. And there's some stories in the book about times where they acted way beyond what morality I thought that they would at this age. At one point, they approached a blind man at a street fair, and they said, "We want to ask him a question." They saw him banging a stick on the road, and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Well, he's blind. He's using that stick to get around." And my one son's like, "Oh, like echolocation." I think he was like 3 at the time or something, or 4. And I'm like, "Kinda, I guess. I don't know how it works, or whatever." But like, he's feeling the vibrations or something. They're like, "We want to ask him a question." So I'm like, okay, we go up and I tap him on the shoulder. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, my kids want to ask you a question." And he gets down to my son's level and he goes, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, ask away." And then my one son, the 4-year-old, grabs his hands together like this and he goes, "What's your favorite bird?" And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why would you ask a blind man what his favorite bird is? Right? Like, thinking like, I don't know if he's going to take offense to it, but like, how would he know the difference in birds if he's never been able to see?
Yeah.
And he said, he started crying. He's like, his eyes, he was like, tears come down his eyes. He said, "No one's ever asked me that question before." And he pulled up his sleeve and he had this giant tattoo of a phoenix. And he said, "The phoenix is my favorite bird because, like me, it's risen from the ashes." And that was a magical moment between my kids who thought outside the box, were thinking, we just want to go and talk to this person and treat him like a human being. And we want to ask him, a question that's important to me and important to him. And I look up and his wife is just bawling. Like, she's just bawling her eyes out. And I start crying. And the kids are just like, what's going on? Like, why is everyone crying? Yeah. And I'm like, no, yeah, you guys did a great thing. This is amazing. And as they were walking off, I heard him say, like, "This made my day." So it's so neat to hear what our kids can accomplish when we raise them in a world where it's good to have empathy. We just keep hearing how negative empathy is these days. And it's crazy to me. It's just like building that empathy and showing that, that person over there is hurting. What can we do to help them? Right? Like, how would you feel in that certain circumstance? And I think that that's just an important thing that we can teach our kids. And regardless of where it comes from, as long as it's not causing harm or, anything like that, I think it's warranted.
I think that's the story to end on. I think that's a fantastic story. So real quick, name of the book again.
It's Humanism from the Heart, Building Bridges Beyond Belief.
Where can I get it?
Amazon, pretty much anywhere where you can get books.
Okay. All right. One more question, just personal. My son's going to be going to Bowling Green State University up in Bowling Green, Ohio, just outside of Toledo. How far is that from you?
From me, it's probably about 3 hours.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's still quite a distance from you. I was just wondering.
It is, yeah. Like I've gone to Cleveland a few times to do presentations and stuff with the Cleveland Humanist Alliance, and I've passed Bowling Green on my way through. Yeah. So
okay, yeah.
It might even be less. It might be 2.5 hours. I'm not sure.
All right. I didn't know because I'm going to be up there in June for his orientation, and I thought I'm going to be up there for a couple of days. I thought maybe I could try to buy you dinner, but that'd be a bit.
Oh, that'd be really cool. So. Maybe we can meet in Michigan or something.
Yeah, maybe up in Detroit. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Great to meet you.
And feel free. Yeah, nice to meet you guys too. If you ever want to do this again, I'd love to do this again.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Living on Common Ground. Please follow wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends. You can also find a link to our social in the description. The more people we have living on common ground, the better the world will be.